Up+Adam.
Tractor systems are offline.
We are Beyond FM.
Beyond FM.
The future of broadcasting is here.
Up+Adam with Adam Montiel. It's community content from Concentrate. It's Up+Adam with Adam Montiel.
Some say life is where it begins. Straight to the stars is where it ends. Yes, some say life is just where it begins. Straight to the stars is where it ends. Only to start again.
Happy Monday, and thank you so much for being Up+Adam. What a gorgeous Monday already. Beautiful weekend. Thanks for being here. Thanks for connecting. So what if I told you this next conversation isn't really about Bruce Lee? What a lead-in, right? It's about you. It's about identity, power, fighting to be seen, and what happens when the world decides you're a symbol before you ever get to be a person. Later in the show, I'm talking to award-winning author Jeff Chang, who's written a groundbreaking new biography on Bruce Lee. But this book isn't about kicks and credits. It's not just about kicks and credits, that's for sure. Water Mirror Echo, the name of the book, it tells the human story behind this legend and so much more. It's a portrait of a man who lived between worlds and built a new one along the way. Sometimes we feel like life's like that. We'll talk about how he reframed masculinity, shed light on immigrant struggles, appropriate for right now, even Hollywood gatekeeping gets touched on, and why softness might just be the next superpower. I'm excited for today's chat. It's coming up just a few minutes here on Up+Adam. First, though, for my gourd geeks, you getting ready to carve that pumpkin? I would love you to carve smarter, not harder. That's the theme. To do that, first, these are some pumpkin tips. First, you got to pick the pumpkin for the design, not the other way around. Bring your template. If you got one in your head or you want to work, bring it to the patch. Size it up. See if it works. Funky shapes, warts, chef's kiss. Yeah. Instant character. Those pumpkins just look, they just got the look. Sometimes we avoid them in the patch, but when they're on the porch, they look so good. Just make sure it sits flat, ideally. It feels firm and it isn't bruised or mushy, not a good pumpkin. If you can cut it right off the vine, even better. Fresh stem equals longer life. Yeah, but I don't think we have a whole lot of cut places here. Design time. Let's talk design time. Faces are classic, yes, but go wild. I remember one time, I think the Dodgers were in the playoffs or something, and it was in October, and I did the LA symbol, and I spent a long time on that thing, cutting it all out, it looked good. Yeah, it's fun when you knock a pumpkin out of the park and get that design down. It feels really good. But go wild. Stars, your initials, a haunted house, your dog. Be honest about your timeline, though. Intricate patterns, they can take hours. Tape or pin your pattern on it. Use maybe sewing transfer paper to trace it clearly and cleanly. That works. And then let's talk gear. Cheap pumpkin kit. Easy. Saw, scoop, punch. That'll absolutely do the job. Add in a big spoon, maybe an ice cream scoop for the guts, a ladle for speed, and if you're handy, a drill or a jigsaw for polka dot magic. That could kind of be cool. I never did that before, but that's in here too. Cover the table with a disposable cloth, glove up for some scoopage, and then deglove for cutting so that nothing slips. Yikes, right? Pro move, you'll thank me for this later. Don't cut the lid off the top. We've done this forever, and I just learned this. Took me this long to learn this. Don't cut the stem and do the whole circle around the stem and do that. Cut the pumpkin from the back or the bottom. Yeah, get right up in the booty. That's where all the guts are anyways. You get a whole bunch just coming right out with that. So keeping the stem intact keeps your pumpkin happier for a lot longer. Scoop in circles till the walls are clean, even a bit thin. Start your cuts by pre-punching the lines for depth and glow. Scrape some areas instead of cutting all the way through. Just scrape, you got it. Preserve the good stuff. A light bleach bath or a daily spritz. Mind your clothes and surfaces. Rub petroleum jelly on cut edges. I know, right? Light the pumpkin with flameless LEDs. candles will dry your pumpkin out and, fire. So, but I don't mean, it's not like pumpkins are just lighting up, but still it dries them out. So save those seeds for roasting also. Sweet, spicy, savory snack victory, maybe even on Halloween. Cue the spooky playlist, pour some hot mulled cider or maybe some mulled wine. We're on the Central Coast here. And then carve that masterpiece up. And tag me. I want to see your pumpkin. Bonus points for the weird warty ones too. So there you go. If you don't have the gift of gourd inherently, now you do. Now you got the hacks. All right, before we get into our chat with Jeff Chang, I want to thank my friends for being here at Life Elements. I love them. Open your medicine cabinet and really be honest. How much of that stuff is actually doing anything? Life Elements is what happens when clean, plant-based ingredients meet actual healing results. They make powerful wellness products that aren't just natural. They work. Bug spray that repels and smells good and is safe for you and your pets and your kids. Relief sticks that help sore muscles, make them feel like magic. Balms that soothe everything from bites to burns. It's all handcrafted in Atascadero. Kurt and Martha are just absolutely awesome. Swing by their spot and see what Martha is whipping up. 7425 El Camino Real, Suite O, that back corner of the plaza. You can't miss it. You can also shop their products at the Hive in Arroyo Grande, the General Store downtown Paso, and of course, lifeelements.com. While you're there, use the promo code ADAM, 15%. Yeah, because what is in your cabinet should actually take care of you. And with Life Elements, it will.
It's Up and Adam with Adam Montiel.
All right, my guest today, one of the most respected cultural historians of our time. A writer who spent his career bringing voice to stories that shape who we are, even when the world isn't listening. Jeff Chang, the award-winning author of Can't Stop, Won't Stop, great book. Who We Be, and We Ain't Gonna Be All Right. And now he's back with his most personal, ambitious work yet. Water, Mirror, Echo. Bruce Lee and the Making of Asian America. This isn't just a book about a movie star, or just for Asian people or people who love movies or people who love martial arts. It is a human story of immigration, identity, masculinity, and the price of symbolism. And it's a new way of seeing Bruce Lee. Certainly from someone who did martial arts as a kid, I was intrigued by this, but seeing him with this new angle, this new turn of the kaleidoscope, not just as a fighter, but as a philosopher, a mirror, and maybe even a metaphor for all of us trying to belong. Jeff Chang joins us now. Man, thank you so much for being Up and Adam.
Oh, man, it's good to meet you, and thank you for having me.
One thing that I thought was really interesting, and I interviewed these two guys who did this book on Kung Fu and the implications it had on culture, and it was so interesting that there were so many similarities in the Kung Fu movies, hip hop. And I noticed that yours, there's a lot of places where those rivers conflate with hip hop and kind of what you're talking about with these communities. Isn't that interesting?
2000%. I mean, you know me. I wrote this book, Can't Stop, Won't Stop, A History of the Hip Hop Generation. Came out 2005. We did a YA edition, updated it in 2021. But, I got this book contract because a Korean American editor came to me and he said, dude, you wrote Can't Stop, Won't Stop. I said, yeah. He's all like, you should be able to do something on Bruce Lee then. And I was like, yeah. It took me about 30 seconds to say, not even 30 seconds, maybe 3.5 seconds to say, yeah, let's do that. Sign me up. And so I, hip hop loves Bruce Lee, and Bruce Lee is probably the most Asian American hip hopper ever. The most hip hop Asian American.
Right.
However you want to put it. Right. He's that guy.
Did you get into martial arts at all in your paths?
I did. I would never consider myself an expert and that kind of thing. My son's the one who's like a 3rd degree black belt, and
nice.
So I know who wears the pants in our family, but it's something that I had to experience, and I've been lucky enough to be able to do all that. Still do a lot of Tai Chi and Qigong and stuff like that. So
that's rad.
I keep up my practice. Yeah.
So many of us grew up seeing Bruce Lee as this symbol of strength peace, even a little rebellion. But symbols are heavy. They don't get to put their arms down per se. But in writing Water Mirror Echo, when did you first feel the weight that Bruce really carried? Not just as a martial artist or even a movie star, but as a man forced to carry the image of a whole people.
Ooh, yeah, man. I feel like once I started diving into doing a lot of interviews about his days in Hollywood, I got to really understand how deeply he took the responsibility of being able to portray Asians and Asian Americans in a good light, and how difficult it was going to be for him to be able to actually do that. You know, he gets this role. First of all, I don't know if you and your listenership are deep on Asian American stereotypes, but the two kind of male stereotypes that we had to deal with, still to now, are the Charlie Chan stereotype, right? Like the sort of like shy, retiring, kind of portly, like sort of like, what do you call it? Sort of a sellout Chinese guy.
Yeah. Right? You know, there's a funny guy I follow where he always breaks down older Asian men's fits, and he breaks down.
Yeah.
So good. And he does it in a complimentary way, but it is kind of like, it plays into a little bit what you're saying. I get it. Yeah,
a little bit of that. Definitely. Like there's a little bit of that stereotypical stuff kind of going on, but Charlie Chan was like the good Chinaman. Mm-hmm. Okay. Mm-hmm. And then Fu Manchu was like the bad Chinaman, right? He's like the epitome of like whatever, the sort of threat of China and its claws and the yellow peril and all this other kind of stuff coming over to take over the U.S. And that's the two kind of stereotypes that we're dealing with. So Bruce, his first opportunity to come to Hollywood is to play the son of Charlie Chan. Right, and that gives you an idea of how limited roles were for that. And then he doesn't get that role because the show doesn't get made because the company doesn't want to have an Asian American superhero or a star or a lead. This is the 1960s, the mid 1960s. But he gets a starring or co-starring role as Kato, which is like the manservant to the Green Hornet, right? So he cooks the guy's food, he drives the guy around in a car, and because the Green Hornet doesn't have any kind of skills himself, he just has gadgets, because that's how the superheroes did back then. Like, he has to get out of the car and kick people's butts to save the Green Hornet's butt every episode, right? So he's doing it all, right? And when the show ends, he realizes he can't get any roles in Hollywood that don't fulfill some sort of a subservient stereotype. And that's sort of what leads him eventually to deciding he has to go to Hong Kong, because that's the only place that's going to see him the way he sees himself, which is as a lead, as a main character. Right? So that's what he does.
So you have a line, and I hope I don't get it wrong, but it's kind of like, what does it mean to become the symbol of an entire people, and what does it cost, right? And that's what's like, was this lost on Bruce? And what did that cost look like for Bruce? And do you think the world ever paid it back?
Well, I think, we have begun to pay it back. Well, let's get back to that. There's a lot there. But, he is a star in Asia. He becomes Asia's hugest star, the biggest star that Asia has ever seen, like just selling everything, selling everywhere, right? And so Hollywood decides that they're going to make a TV show. They call it Kung Fu, right? And they audition Bruce for the lead in that, but they decide to give it to David Carradine and have him play the role in Yellowface. So they got this white guy playing the lead character in Kung Fu, and Bruce is like, all right, fine, So he continues to rise as a star, and he makes Hollywood pay attention to him such that they ask for him. And so that's where the movie Enter the Dragon comes from. And here's the thing, Adam, he's going through all of these fights with the studio to get Asians represented the way that he thinks that they need to be represented. So he actually goes out on a boycott at one point of the film. He sits out of his own movie because they won't add scenes in which Asians are allowed to talk about Asian philosophy. That's the opening of Enter the Dragon, which none of us can imagine that anymore, right?
Right.
Without those scenes. And then he has to fight to have the title be Enter the Dragon, which we can't imagine the movie being named anything but. Right. But they wanted to call it Han's Island because they could only see Asians as villains and they thought maybe an island or a rock in the middle of the ocean was more like legible or legitimate to American audiences than an Asian American or an Asian superhero. And so that's what he's fighting. And I think that's like what's on his back. And he is exhausted. You can see that he's lost a lot of weight if you're actually watching the movie and comparing it to earlier movies. He's not sleeping. His friends saying that he's really irritable. And then literally a month before the movie comes out, he suddenly dies. And you know, it's still a mystery as to why he died, but it's no mystery, you know, that he was carrying a lot on his shoulders at the time. Now, the question about whether that debt's been paid back, it's taken 2 generations for us to be able to get to a movie like Everything Everywhere All at Once, where Michelle Yeoh wins the Oscar, literally playing all of these different types of Asian American characters in a science fiction kind of concept, where the only way that we can like grasp that she can be all these different people is to put her into a multiverse, right? So in other words, you can't see the range of Asian American humanity unless we put it into a sci-fi concept, right?
Yeah.
And I think that that's like the depth to which, you know, it's been, right? Like Bruce Lee wanted to see Asian Americans represented in all our humanity. And it took 2 generations for us to see Michelle Yeoh playing literally all of these different types of roles and parts in one movie to be able to kind of almost make up for all of that.
You know, when I think of like martial arts in my life or even hip hop in my life, Bruce Lee specifically in my life, I look at some of these things that like, you talk Into the Dragon. I mean, I worshipped that movie growing up. And then I remember it like that, and I had an older sister, so that and Grease were like the 2 movies that I just like know front to back, right? You know,
I hear you.
And then, of course,
I'm right there with you.
The Thriller video, you know, like doing all the choreography. So there's things that you just learn that be programmed, ingrained, and you know, baked into your head. But I think of all the things that evolved from like Enter the Dragon. Like I see like a lot of that mainstream stuff in ways we did pay, like Ernie Reyes Jr. or Jonathan Brandis with Sidekicks. I mean, of course, Karate Kid. But like so many things that were, but like I saw Ernie Reyes Jr. I was like, yeah, he's an Asian kid. He's like going to school. He's like a cute little kid. And like girls loved him. Like I was like, dude's got it made. Like that seemed like this was kind of starting to be like, yeah, you know?
Yeah, and then you have to wait like another generation, right? For like movies like that. For movies like I'm getting excited. I'm knocking the mic around. Yeah. But you got me fired up, man. Because then it takes another generation for us to kind of get back to all that, right? Because Karate Kid 2, 3, like they come out the 80s, maybe 90s. I don't know, maybe. Yeah, and
late
then
80s.
It takes us. Late 80s, right? And then it takes us all this time to get back to even like Cobra Kai or whatever, right?
Right.
It goes in cycles. You know, there's these moments where Hollywood will open it up for us. We get a little bit of a crease and we get in there and we do our thing, and then they shut it down. So, you know, we're hoping that this time it sticks.
I love how you invert Bruce famously explaining about being water. And it's one of the most beautiful things he says. And, you know, even if you don't know Bruce Lee, you probably know that. But I love how your book flips it. Water also represents danger, depth, fear. And Bruce didn't even know how to swim, you talk about in the book. So how did Bruce's fear of water reshape like that mantra, what it really meant, especially when you're talking about race, masculinity, identity, all that?
Oof, wow, man. How much time do we have, Adam?
I know, I wish we got to get some lunch, right?
Man, there's so much to talk about there. But yes, he's at a swimming pool with his sister, and she dunks him under the water a little too long, and he comes up for air, and he's fearful of water for the rest of his life. So water becomes for him like this really powerful symbol of like what he doesn't know, what he still needs to grasp, what he still needs to get under control, you know? And I think that as he moves through life, you know, that metaphor just grows bigger and bigger and bigger to him. And it becomes a type of thing where it's, you know, he begins to flip it because he is able to explain to his students, his Kung Fu students, like this is how you want to be. You want to be like water. Water can be anything. It'll take on any property. It'll be elusive. It'll be adaptable. It'll move in a straight line if you are directing it in that kind of a way. And it's this powerful metaphor for how to live in the world, right? How to like deal with all these uncertainties or difficult situations that you confront. You can go around it. You can go through it. You can go under it. You can go over it, right? There's all these different kinds of ways. You just need to be like water. But there are two other lines that were part of this text that he had discovered when he was 17 or 18 years old, I think, is when he discovered it. This is the poem. Moving, be like water. Still, be like a mirror. Respond like an echo. And he spent his entire life trying to figure out these lines, And to me, the big tragedy in his life is he never got to be still like a mirror. He was always moving, right? And he never got to get to a point where he could just respond like an echo, right? At least not in his life. I think in his fighting and all that kind of stuff, he was able to incorporate those things. But in his life, he was never able to be still, and he was never able to just respond. And so, he becomes a mirror to all of us who feel like we've been stepped on, no matter what background we're coming from, no matter what gender or anything. Like, he's the hero of the underdog, but he himself never got to experience that mirroring process, and his words respond over all of these decades, past all these generations to us, but he never got to be able to experience what it would mean to live that way, to find out what it meant to live that in his daily life.
Yeah, you spin that, kind of spinning off what you just said. It was so good. You write that Bruce didn't just live a life. He left a legacy that's still being written. He's been everything. He's been a Halloween costume. He's been a meme, a political protest, right? Yeah. What does that say about us that the world keeps reinventing Bruce Lee in our image?
I think that, his image is so flexible in that kind of a way, right? And, at the beginning of the book, I'm saying, I think it's because in part, like, people don't relate it to circumstances, to a concrete set of experiences, because people don't know in general a lot about Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders in the U.S. and what we're going through, right? We do, and that's partly why he's a symbol to us. And I think that if you begin to learn more about that, he becomes even more of a symbol of power, of unity, of pride, of solidarity, no matter, again, what background you're coming from. He's a universal symbol in that kind of a way. But I think, the other part of it too, though, is that he's 5'7". Right? He's 130 pounds, maybe, like after a big steak, he's like literally like all of that. And he's defeating like hordes of enemies that are coming out of him. And no matter how big they are, he's defeating them. Right. And so he taps something deep in us. Like, we love to side, I think, with the underdog. Because I think all of us see ourselves, for the most part, I think maybe our current president doesn't, but most of us see ourselves as underdogs, right? As people who are struggling at one point or another, who just want to get over, right? And who want to feel like we belong. And I think that that's what he represents to us. And so it's really fascinating to me how every generation discovers him. They're like, oh yeah, I see that guy. And then they make him their own, right? So for our generation, he's the guy behind two turntables with his dark glasses on, getting ready to rock, some back-to-back cuts, right? Like, that image is like the hip hop generation image. And then during the pandemic, he becomes this symbol, this picture that we see in Chinatowns and Asian American communities and on all of the Asian American TikTok and Instagram feeds. Like, he's a hero. He's a symbol of strength. Like, we're going to get through this. And also to others, like, hey, if you can see Bruce, maybe you can see us, and what we're going through right now in the pandemic with all this violence going on against us. And I don't know what the next generation is going to make of him, but he's something. Yeah.
I'm curious what you learned about both sides of him, like the way he held his weakness and his strength. What kind of father, what kind of lover, like the man, especially in private. What did we learn?
That he was very vulnerable and insecure, and I think that was really surprising to me. But I don't personally read or speak Chinese. I'm like 7th generation from Hawaii, but I have a really, really good friend who's a brilliant translator, and she worked with me to explain a lot of his Chinese writings. When he was, he grew up in Hong Kong, and he was sent back to the U.S. because he got into too many fights. So his parents are like, "You're born in the U.S., you're going to go back to the U.S., and we're going to give you $100. You're going to figure it out. You're going to figure yourself out, because otherwise you're going to get yourself killed. You've gotten in way too many fights here." And when he does that, he takes out a tablet on this 3-week journey across the Pacific, and he starts writing to himself in Chinese. And some of what he writes are these old Chinese sayings, like they're called chengyu. They're like 4-character idioms, right? And one of them is like literally like, forgive others, but never forgive yourself. Like he's sitting there going, wow, I really messed this up. Like, how am I going to do this, right? And there's another one that's in there about like, always be on guard. You never know what's going to happen. Like he's somebody who he has flunked all of his English classes, in Hong Kong. It's a British colony, but he hasn't really figured it out. So he's coming to the U.S. as an immigrant. Yeah. And he's living in racially segregated neighborhoods with other folks of color, and he doesn't speak the language well, and he's feeling very vulnerable at that point. So, it's different points in his life. He
sounds hard on himself too. He sounds really hard on himself.
Yeah, wow. I think that was part of maybe the source of his. Friends described him as intense. He was always fixed on trying to get better and trying to improve himself and that kind of thing. There was a deep-rooted insecurity, I think, that was there, along with like, a pride of like presentation. Like he wanted to appear in the world as really put together. Yeah,
I have a few quick hits. I want to see if I get one, and really quick. Was he rich? Did he do really well with money? Did he have a lot of money?
He did fine. He did fine at the end, but during his lifetime, he was not rich.
That scene in Hollywood, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, with him and Brad Pitt and that whole thing. Is that true? Did that happen?
Never happened. Fake. Completely fake.
How do you think he died?
I don't know. And I really want to focus on how he lived as opposed to how he died. And that's where the genesis of the book comes from.
Yeah, it's just so interesting. And I'm curious, like, how much of Bruce's story is a mirror of the Asian American story, and how much of Asian America was built in his reflection?
I think the answer to the first question is a lot of it. A lot of us see a lot of ourselves in this. He was an immigrant. He lived in racially segregated communities. He went through all the things that we went through. They fled war. At one point, he almost died as a baby because of war, of hunger and sickness that was around him. So there's a lot of that we see in ourselves. And I think to your last question, I think a lot of it, like, I don't think of Asian America as separate from Bruce Lee. For me, Bruce Lee is Asian America. And I think for a lot of us, that's the case. And what I want folks to kind of take away from this is not necessarily that Bruce Lee is only for Asian Americans. Right. I want folks to be able to see Asian America through Bruce's life. And I also want folks to understand that if we think of Bruce as the quintessential American, then maybe we can all understand each other a little bit better.
Yeah, what does Bruce's path talk about as far as like, masculinity today and the way that has evolved and even changed even now? How can we apply that, you think?
That's a complicated question, because I think that masculinity in Bruce's time is not what masculinity is now. I think that masculinity's evolved. I think it's a lot more fluid and flexible, right? And a lot more generous, or at least I hope it was heading that way until like 9 months ago or so. I think that what we can learn from Bruce is that being a warrior doesn't necessarily mean being aggro about everything that you're about. It means about protecting the ones you love, but it also means that you are open to the world and you're open to different influences, right? So it's not about being somebody who's closed and defensive. It's about being ready for change and adaptable.
It's almost like you think some of his power came from, yes, his strength, but his softness.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think Bruce was a student of yin and yang, you know, of both sides of this. You know, water is the epitome of yin, of so-called feminine energy, right? He was a ball of yang. He was a ball of action and activity, you know? And he understood very much that he needed to understand and incorporate his opposite. And so I think that that's like his lifelong obsession with water is that, because he was sort of not that. He was the fire guy. So if we want to get all elemental and weird and like kind of spooky about it, like I think that that's what's going on. But there's a lot in his life to illustrate that. Yeah.
What part of Bruce's story, Jeff, do you wish more people talked about?
That his vulnerability, like the downside or the other side of what it meant to become who he became.
Yeah.
You know? And so that's what I tried to recover in the book, was to bring back the man like beneath the legend and to reveal him, because I think it makes him even more of a hero.
Yeah.
Not less of a hero, but more of a hero to us when we understand what he actually lived through.
I'm glad I got you for a couple extra minutes. This was such a fun conversation. I'd love to chat with you again. Maybe even bring up Can't Stop, Won't Stop. That was awesome. And I just think I knew I would vibe with you really well. And this was a lot of fun for me.
Yeah, me too, man. Thank you so much for having me, Adam, man. I'm happy to come back anytime you want to rock.
I love that. Do you, can I just get a hold of you through your website, or what's a great way to like reach out? Insta or what?
Yeah, hit me through the Insta. Hit me through Insta, Zentronics at Zentronics. Or, you know, you can get through my publicist, but when we connect, we'll connect and we'll make it happen.
Appreciate it, man. Thank you very much. Appreciate you a lot. Mike, thanks a lot.
Must be a California thing with you two.
Yeah, right. Yeah, probably is.
It is. Yeah, for sure.
All right, see you guys.
Take care.
Some say life's where it begins. Straight to the stars is where it ends. Only to start again.
All right, the book is called Water, Mirror Echo. Bruce Lee in the Making of Asian America. It is out now wherever you get your books. Got links in the show notes. And Jeff, thank you for this work and this conversation. What a fun chat. All right, you know we have been celebrating Arttober all weekend long. October in San Luis Obispo, anything but ordinary. It is Arttober, from live performances to public art, museums, and the always fun piano in the plaza. Well, creativity, it's everywhere. Don't miss it. Find your Arttober adventure at slowcity.org/Arttober. Arttober lives on this week. Coming up this week, we're going to chat with the ballet. I'm really excited to meet both Teresa and Blair from the Slow Ballet. And speaking of this week, we have a lot of great local interviews. We're going to meet Megan Burkhardt. She's the brand new publisher of Slow Life magazine. That's going to be a great conversation. Also, the one and only Rob Rossi, a developer, architect extraordinaire in San Luis Obispo County, the guy who's got all the Disney trains up at Santa Margarita. This guy's story is just insane. Such a pivotal part of this community. And I can't wait to sit down with him. We have a long conversation to share. I'm almost wondering, do I do something like that in two parts? You know, if it's like about an hour chat, do we do it in two parts or do I just let it roll? Because it'd be such a shame to not hear the whole thing. I'm thinking maybe two parts. It is that good. It is that good. So that's all coming up this week. I love it. You know, I love these national names like we had today, Jeff Chang and, you know, New York Times best-selling this or whatever. Those are all fun. But to get the local folks in here, that's exactly what we do. It's where we started. It's where we will always be. And it's what's most important to me. So having a week chock full of really big local topics, I'm stoked. I am stoked for this week. I hope you are too. Thank you for connecting. Thanks to Moonshiner Collective for being original music on the show called Start Again. Check them out anywhere you get your music, moonshinercollective.com. Also, our friends at Timbre Winery, Timbre, timbrewinery.com. Taste their wines in the village of Arroyo Grande. Speaking of Arroyo Grande, went to that new Luca's Deli. That was good. We haven't been there before. Lady I Fancy and I went down in a little AG, little village, and walked up and down the village, you know, pretty cool. Great vibe there. So check out Timbre Winery, timbrewinery.com. I thank them for the Timbre Lobro Studios. And right now, our Breaking and Entering Christmas is officially open. The curtains have been rolled back, and we are accepting nominations for a family that is, by all accounts, had a tough year. maybe financial hardship, maybe death in the family, maybe illness. We've seen it all, and we want to be there to help. If you know of a family, you know what? We got a couple. We've already gotten a few nominations. We got more nominations from outside this area, which one goes, yeah, a lot of people are listening from all over the place. That's cool. Got one from Niagara Falls. Oh my gosh. San Diego. Totally touched to see these people. But this is this is in San Luis Obispo County, because this is how we can mobilize. We are here. This is where the show comes from. So you gotta be, and I hate to do something, but then again, I love to do something because I'm a local dude. I love to do something local, but this is for SlowCal, our Breaking and Entering Christmas. But we'd love for you to be able to help for anywhere. And who knows, maybe if you want to still hit me up from outside this area, outside SlowCal, I know of people who do this in other areas, and I would be happy to forward your story on to them too. So again, go to AdamMontiel.com, hit the Breaking and Entering Christmas tab right off the homepage. You can't miss it. It's on top, it's on the middle, you just can't miss it. And then let us know about that family so we can maybe make a difference. Also, I told you on Friday that we had a venue for our December 6th Jingle Jam, and the venue had to pull. They had to pull the carpet out from under us. It's a bummer. I'm not mad. I'm just like, I got to figure this out. Like, look, they had the opportunity to, get paid for their venue, and I get it. It's just a huge bummer. I didn't know that could happen or certainly expect that to happen. So we need a venue for, I got Damon Castillo, a ton more artists. I want to do a Jingle Jam again. It really helped our family last year, our Breaking and Entering family. So if you have a venue, I'm trying to reach out to. I think I'd love to hit up the Fremont. See if Rob Rossi could hook that up. I don't know. Maybe you're a winery listening and got out a venue. I'd love to do the Breaking and Entering Jingle Jam, and we're just looking for a venue now. So lots going on. So again, AdamMontiel.com, right off the homepage, and check it out. All right, till tomorrow. I thank you so much for being here, rating, reviewing, subscribing to the podcast, just sharing it with a friend. It means so much. Till tomorrow, thanks for connecting. I'm Adam Montiel. Appreciate you being up and at 'em.
Some say life is where it begins. Straight to the stars is where it ends. Only to start again. Let's start again. We'll start again. Let's start again.